All right. Well, welcome to Higher Ed Athletics. Today, I'm joined by Jason Penry of Penry Advisors. Jason, I wanted to, you and I have talked a couple times now. I know you're really into the fundraising and revenue generation, so I thought we'd have a conversation about that. But first, maybe just tell people your background and what you're up to.
Yeah. So first off, hey, thanks so much for having me, Travis. I really enjoy the podcast, and it's been a treat to get to know you. But in terms of my background, there's really two things. All my friends say the same things. The ones that know me, they know that I love college baseball, and I also love fundraising, particularly in college athletics. But uh, I was a student athlete. I played for LSU Shreveport baseball. I was a very bad left-handed pitcher. And by the way, LSU Shreveport, my pilots went 59 and 0. The only time in the history on any level of college baseball, 167 years, that anybody's went undefeated for an entire season. So I'm very proud of them. But anyway, I was student body president at LSUS and got interested in higher education and eventually started the 12th Man Foundation. And at the 12th Man Foundation, I started in a data entry role, and which was a lot of fun, and then moved to research and then eventually major gifts. And I learned so much at the 12th Man Foundation, of course, one of the top producing fundraising arms in the country. But I learned the importance of teamwork. And from there, I went to Oklahoma State, and I was the executive director of the posse. And someone told me at NACTA once, Jason, you have the coolest title in all of college athletics. And I thought, oh, yeah, I think I love that. I lead the posse. But, I learned so much there from the few times that I visited with Boone Pickens and also Mike Holder, greatest fundraising AD in the history of college athletics. And people were like, oh, Boone Pickens. And I said, well, you look at the numbers and you take even Boone Pickens out, he's still the top producing fundraising AD ever. But, I learned from him and asked him questions like, hey, Coach Holder, what makes a great fundraiser? So I got to learn so much from him. Now moved over to university administration and worked for a Division II school and was a vice president and got to see athletics from a different lens, a different perspective, which has really helped, particularly in the consulting world. And then moved to Arkansas State and spent 7 years there, and 7 years was some of the most fun times I had. But there, I really had two jobs, and people are like, "Okay, two jobs. What are you talking about?" Well, about 2 months into my tenure, the chancellor came into my office and he said, "Hey, Jason, we're going to start a med school." And I said, "Oh, Tim, that's wonderful. That is outstanding. That is so cool." And he goes, "And you're going to be the point person for it." And I said, I don't know anything about about medical schools. He goes, "Oh man, you're smart. You'll figure it out." So I literally Googled how to start a med school. And then, with hundreds of people, we all rallied together and got that done. That had nothing to do with fundraising, but also led the fundraising team and worked with some outstanding people. And then moved back to Texas A&M. We finished a $4.25 billion campaign, and also, I was able to hold a chair, be the second holder of an endowed chair. I think there's like five maybe in the country, and just learn from some great people. And then finally, before I started Penry Advisors, my friend Travis Dabney, the CEO of the 12th Man Foundation, he talked me into coming back before I went on my own and did Penry Advisors. He said, "Hey, we're doing this NIL organization, and it's like nothing anyone's doing." And I said, "I'm not really interested in that NIL. That's a crazy area." And I'm glad I did, because it was the first in-house effort. And I visited with one of the athletic directors of the Sun Belt last week, and he was like, "Yeah, Jason, 12 Man Plus Fund. I really remember that. Y'all really shook things up." But I had so many early relationships in that, and it really helped me in my consulting. And Penry Advisors, the short of it is, I help people raise more money, and I'm fully invested, and I work with about 20 clients. A couple of them have rolled off, so it's 18 to be exact now. But I really help in three areas. The first area is strategy and counsel, focusing on what's most important, and typically that starts with an assessment and just kind of ask a lot of questions and do a lot of listening. So, and then the second thing is coaching, and a lot of it's one on one, but fundraising is a tough job,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a really tough job. And I spend a lot of time just encouraging fundraisers, and even 20 years into it, I would still get down. No one likes to be told no or have no one return your phone calls. It's easier when you're vice chancellor versus an entry level fundraiser. And I remember that. But I help with coaching. And then the third thing I really help with is helping find talent. There's so much turnover.
Yeah.
So I know what's going on and the lay of the land and have a lot of relationships and able to help find talent. So those are really the three things I do. I love it. It's been a fun career. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I've had so many great mentors and that have helped me along the way. So
Yeah, that's
that's
awesome.
that's
The
my back.
Yeah, that's an awesome background. And yeah, I was just when I talked about having you on here, and for those just listening, you didn't. This isn't a sponsored interview. I wanted to bring you on, so it's not like Penry Advisors is paying to be on here or anything. I've always been kind of curious about finding someone that knows how to talk strictly about one topic. And as I start to do that, because the goal is most people that listen to this want to be or watch this, they want to be athletic directors. Some of them already are athletic directors, but they have very different backgrounds. Some are D2 athletic directors that have told me that they are wanting to get it to the D1 level at some point too. And so I feel like when I put out my D1 AD tracker spreadsheet, I think 3 weeks ago, the amount of times I've had to change it because of AD turnover, I didn't. I said I'm gonna always edit this and update it right whenever it happens. It's like I thought we were mostly done, and then everybody decides to move in AD chairs. But I had a couple people reach out asking me, okay, I know you put like some of this, what position were they previously, and but I didn't go into detail on the background. Now I have that information. Some of it I just keep it privately for something I'm building. But a lot of people are asking me, what do you think the next wave of AD hires is going to be? And I was like, well, I can tell you without looking up the data. I mean, it's going to be most likely it's going to be a sitting AD if it's like if they're looking to move up, you're going to see that more. But also, I think it's going to be people that can raise money. I mean, look at what we're doing, right? I mean, you've got to constantly, and it's not like this is a 1 year thing. Like this is a commitment now that you're always going to be having to put money in, and you're going to have to find new revenue streams. So, what is kind of your take on the current state of fundraising, and then also like maybe say the difference between fundraising versus new revenue generation and development, capital campaigns. Like I feel like some people just think, can you raise money? But there's different ways to do that, right?
Yeah, it's all really relationship building, and relationship building can help you get a medical school started. It can help you raise money. It can help you build relationships with vendors. It can help you. I mean, there's so many benefits to fundraising in particular, or having that kind of background. And I would say the current lay of the land, some of the things that I see. Of course, you're absolutely right, Travis. I mean, I wrote my dissertation in 2007. So I finished my PhD in 2008. But even then, the topic was revenue generation and cost containment in the Big 12, SEC, and ACC. Those were the like conferences at the time, power conferences with 12 teams, a championship game. But there's always been demand there. And like you, I love research, I love data. And if you go back from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, the 90 to present day, every decade, the amount of the operating budget that comes from donor contributions has shot up. And so yeah, you're right. The need for fundraising talent is always there. But I think you asked me what the maybe the current lay of the land is.
Yeah, like you think that am I right that if you're going to be an AD, we're shifting back. We went through this period of time and probably, COVID and then just a bunch of lawsuits. There's a lot of smart lawyer backgrounds, and then they'd have other people on their team. Because no matter where you're at, if you have a weakness, you're going to hire for your weakness whenever you're building out your team, right? But like if you're a president or chancellor right now and you're getting a fresh start of your AD, your board is probably quickly going to say, like, we need someone who can raise money or raise partnerships. So, I mean, are we getting back to that phase where you think the next trend is going to be either you already proved that you're a sitting AD and even if that's not your background, you've proven your department can fundraise. If we're just looking at the individual, like a first time AD, I mean, they're most likely going to come from somewhere that they raised some revenue and generated some new revenue streams. Is that
Oh yeah,
correct?
yeah. I mean, it's so important and it's valued. And before we got started, we were talking about the South Florida open role, the CEO that they're looking to generate revenue. So I would say, you know, you have really some big things at play here. And one of them is one of the things I've noticed. My former boss became the commissioner of higher ed in Louisiana, and I stay in touch with a lot of these commissioners of higher ed. And one time I did a survey with seven of the 50, I assume they're 50, but seven higher ed commissioners. And even 10 years ago, they were talking about things like this. Like you knew that not many people were born in 2000 after that
Yeah, the
financial
enrollment cliff.
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, the enrollment cliff, but also student fees, 1.2 billion, maybe one, and that's being very conservative in student fees for athletics in Division One only. That's not taking into account D2, NAIA, et cetera. So we know that's being scrutinized maybe more than people, more than I see in the popular press right now. And also you have a $20.5 million expense of paying the athletes. So you do need to generate revenue, and that background is critical. It's absolutely it's extremely valuable, and it's so much easier. Again, going back to my dissertation, it's so much easier to do revenue generation and have that as a focus versus cost containment. Cost containment is painful. Cost containment, no one likes to cut sports. And if you really look at it, sure, you can cut some costs and fray the edges a little bit, but it's not going to get you to 20.5 million or to really where you want to be 5, 10 years down the road. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I feel like just not rehiring vacant positions, you're then causing stressors on the other. You're going to have some holes in your staff, and then every time someone leaves, you got to rethink: do we really need to hire that, or can someone else do it? I mean, so that'd be cost containment, right? But like the facilities are not like it's not like they're going to stop, having wear and tear and needing updates, and so that's another thing too. You still got to pay for maintenance on all your facilities.
Yeah, deferred maintenance is a big deal. And look, the costs are only going one way. They're only going up. So the ability to generate revenue, to build relationships, to know the art and science of all of this, whether it be fundraising or sponsorships, is so important. But and I think I've heard you talk about this on one of your podcasts, but leveraging technology, particularly AI,
Yeah.
I think that's something. My wife teaches for Texas A&M on using practical uses of AI, and I just really believe that that's something that will be a focus in the next few years. We're seeing incredible gains, and they think super intelligence is only 12 months to 18 months away. So we're talking about computers being smarter than humans, which is not hard for somebody like me, by the way. I mean, they're already, but it's just cost containment, revenue generation. Yeah, you gotta have resources to be successful.
Yeah.
And man, wow! In the last few years, in particular, we're really seeing that, aren't we?
Yeah, the AI thing, I also made a post on LinkedIn about this the other day, and I don't expect like people to comment on that. I kind of just put my thoughts out into the world as I wonder how many athletic directors secretly or they tell people, I don't know, is they use Chat GPT to think. Like, because if I'm a leader, it's a lonely job sometimes, I'm sure. And so if I'm thinking it through strategies, you could just go into, in a lot of universities, especially the bigger ones, they have partnerships. Like they might have Microsoft Copilot, something like that, where you're not going to put everything in there, but you can just run some ideas or you can run like some scripts of like getting ready to go do a speech and I need to talk about fundraising, the importance of it, and I'm going to be speaking to donors. Well, you can enter prompts and then it'll give you different things so you're not like saying the same message over time and time. But I feel like a lot of athletic directors are up and comers. They got to leverage AI and they could also use it to kind of balance out like their thought process of how they lead their department. And especially if it's, you know, just a whole new area that they can leverage it and yeah, and how it makes your department more efficient. I'm sure you have ideas on how that goes, but yeah, so I can't remember which episode that was, but I've been trying to integrate some practical things in there. I was gonna ask you also about we just heard about like Kansas and their $300 million, gift. Like it's like the biggest gift of in the history of college athletics, which I've got my college sports history book up there. I guess I should pull it out and check, but I'm just kind of curious, are the numbers the real thing that we're seeing whenever we read headlines like that? I mean, is it like, what do you think when you see something like that one, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've put out content on ADU and some other places that hey, big gifts matter and they matter more now than ever. And we're seeing incredible wealth generation generated, particularly in the top 1%. So that's something I've really I really studied because I saw it firsthand at Oklahoma State. Most people think of Boone, but there was also Malone Mitchell gave 28 million, Sherman Smith that gave 20 million. Cecil O'Brate gave I think 35 million. I see that big gifts matter, and really it's just being intentional on that. But yeah, 300 million to Kansas, and then also 22 million today as we're recording this from Binghamton. And they got their baseball deal, so that's not even their biggest gift ever there. But often in consulting, I always hear, "Hey, Jason, we don't have any of those donors," and I said, "Well, maybe you don't have. It's all relative. Maybe you don't have those donors, but you can inspire giving at levels you didn't think was possible." And that's one of the things that I really try to emphasize in consulting work is who are your top 10? Because I knew every year, when I was at Arkansas State, the board, this is what they asked. Jason, we need the big number to get bigger every year. And that's not easy. So you really have to strategize, and really it comes down to I've got to hit on about 10 of my anticipated gifts, prospects. I got to hit about 5 of those, and you will make the big number bigger. But it really, Travis, I always like to simplify, and then we can layer complexity on top of that. But let's simplify it. And really, what it comes down to, I saw this from Mike Holder, again, the best ever. He would always thinking about big dreams. He would use that term often, and he was a big thinker. And to inspire giving at the highest levels, you have to inspire donors. Now, let's do A, B. A, we're going to do this, and it's going to be the absolute best in our conference and among the best in the nation, versus B. Things aren't going well. This is crazy time. This is crazy. I can't believe college athletics has turned to what it has, and man, we're just not in a good position. Well, who's gonna be the AD that raises more money? So think big.
Yeah.
As Kent Hance, the chancellor of the Texas Tech system, used to always say, Jason, I went on a call or two with him, just the two of us, and he would say, Jason, puny thinkers, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he used puny thinkers don't raise any money. And it's true. You've got to inspire giving at that highest level.
I like how you said let's simplify it because for one, yeah, that A versus B, like that's an attitude mindset too, that like who's gonna follow that person when they say, you're not sounding confident that what I give my money to, like there's no vision too. You're not selling a vision, you're selling doomsday. And then we got to try and walk, like get ourselves out of this. versus A, where it's like a visionary. And it reminds me, the I've been in college, I'm in higher ed right now, but like I've been in college athletics for well over a decade. And I always obviously I've been doing this podcast for 6 years, so I hear a lot about happenings and what's going on in athletics. But the best visionary fundraiser that I've ever heard was actually outside of both those industries. It was my pastor, and I love it because we're in the middle, and this is the second campaign we've gone through since we've been at this church for like 6 years, and one of them was really right during COVID. But our church's mission is to raise the next strongest generation. Well, like we're buying in, like that means we're spending money on Bibles, we're spending money on our children's ministry and our middle school and our high schoolers. We now have this thing where we're trying to make sure that college students, we help them find a church that they're going to, and that they but all this stuff takes money, and so the pastor, and we're building a new location for our one of our sites, and a lot of people have this idea of like, oh, they just want your money, but our pastor's not like selling it like you got to donate this money or you're not going to get into heaven or anything. It's nothing like that people like criticize. But the way he wonderfully shared the vision and tried to get buy-in at the smallest levels. Like we're talking about monthly donors, people that never donated before, and just be able to see like the math. And so when you're talking about like a school that yeah, we're younger. We've only been around 40, 50 years. We haven't been around for 200 years yet. We don't have that huge alumni base. I mean, but there's still a way if you tap into like the soul and the vision of what you think, and you believe your leader, and you have a good reputation of following through. I feel like you can get those new donors, right? Like you can say like, okay, we'll chip in, $50 a month, and then you grow that donor year over year. And then all of a sudden those are the ones as they get older, they might be wanting to leave a life gift, or they get, that big job. And so I don't know, whenever you talk about that too, it's just like I think back to that was some of the best storytelling and vision without manipulation to try and get people to participate. And then we also do quarterly, worship nights where everybody that is part of that donation, we talk about it, we get an update on how it's doing, and then we all sing together, and like thousands of people show up to that and they love it. So it's also like keeping them engaged. And I could see athletic departments do something like this, where they're doing this campaign. It's like a mini campaign, but then, every 2 months, we're going to have you out to the stadium. We're going to basically have an update, and we're going to have, make it kind of something, a family night type thing. And you're getting that because you're donating a little bit of money a month. So I feel like that might be, for like those non-football schools or the FCS or some of the G5 schools, that could be a strategy too, is like tap into the new younger people and just keep nourishing that years over.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I teach a class in fundraising in college athletics, and by the way, we need more fundraisers. And one of the things I'm doing to try to supply more fundraisers or uh, create more interest. So I'm going and talking to a number of sport management programs each semester. And if anyone from a sport management program hears this and is interested, I've got a canned speech or a canned presentation that's your awesome career in college athletics fundraising. And, I outline them. Hey, you get to meet interesting and generous people. You get to travel. You get all these things. Okay. It's a challenge. And those of us with sports backgrounds, we love challenges. We don't love boring. No one loves boring. You only get one life. But yeah, I love what you said about your church. And it's the same thing with raising money for academics. It's the same thing for raising money for athletics. The key is this. This is what I tell my class. If you only remember one thing, remember this. Involvement precedes investment almost always. So you have to get donors involved. And oftentimes I'm asked, hey, why can't we get more people to give? And what I always tell them is you shouldn't, the question is not how do we get more people to give? Your question you need to be asking now is how do we get more people engaged and involved? And what does that look like? What's the plan? So,
And that sounds
uh,
like a vision thing too, though, right? Like if you're
yeah,
just doing a strategic plan once every 10 years, that's not like you almost need like a vision and a map of like where are we headed instead of just
Yeah,
because a lot of people get nervous about being able to compete with our roster sizes. Like, but you still need a vision for the department, right?
absolutely. You need a vision, and that's one really there are five things. People without fundraising backgrounds, they'll ask me, "Is like, hey, what do you recommend to me?" And I give them my five things, and vision's definitely one of them.
Well, what are
But
the
but
other four, Dr. Penry?
well, first I'll pass that along, but
Okay.
let me say this. Donors, if you can get them engaged, if you explain, vision, that's one piece of it, but the relationship is what matters. You can inspire giving, but they've got to trust you. And as Mike Holder would say, you just got to be yourself, because if you're yourself, you're authentic. If you're authentic, people trust you. If people trust you, you might be able to raise some money, right? So, but there are two keys there. You have to be able to articulate impact, and then you have to show appreciation. Impact and appreciation are such huge keys. And I just wrote this down, that appreciation is frankly just proving up what impact you said was going to happen. And you take pictures and you tell stories and tell the donors, because guess what? David Booth, he gave 300 million, but he also gave some big gifts prior to that. Okay. So not only did he know he was making an impact, he knows that he was appreciated. I've seen some things that Travis Goff has put out on social. He knows he's appreciated by the entire KU community. So impact and appreciation are absolutely keys for fundraising. Donors they need to know that their money's just not going to a black hole, right? That it's actually making a difference, because there's only so much to go around, and you want to make sure you give money, and it means something. It creates some kind of meaningful change.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure. The
yeah,
And that was the kind of getting into the last thing I was going to talk to you about was, okay, so a lot of people listening to this, they might not have fundraising experience. Because I feel like if the person that is a fundraiser and they're listening to this, they probably know some pretty good fundraisers that they have in their Rolodex that they can call for advice or they work for them, right? And so imagine you're like deputy or senior associate level or entry level, but like entry level, you got a little bit more of a runway, I think, to try and get into a fundraising area. But say you just need to sound smart about it and you need to learn about it. And for me, I know like I have no fundraising background other than doing a sales class for the Indianapolis Indians at IUPUI back in the day, and I did the most cold calls because I have no problem talking.
hey,
No.
congratulations.
But and that was for senior class, sales class. But I'm just kind of curious, like, how would you recommend people learn it? I would say it might be a lazy answer, but you could chat GPT, build your own little st like your own little research on there. I think that's very much acceptable use, but obviously it's not going to get you to become a fundraiser. But like, I just think of like the one thing I don't know is like, okay, what are the options, right? So like, I approach someone, I know I got to have a conversation, but like, okay, what are the different ways that you could fundraise? Like, could you want to do a life gift or do you want to do a monthly thing? You want to do a major campaign? You want to donate to an endowment? Like, I feel like it's sometimes intimidating to people that have no idea, but they know that this is important. We always know in the last like 10 years that this was important. Now we know
Yeah.
this area is even more important. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what should they do to learn about it? Should they just have a conversation with someone? Is there a book they could read? Just things like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a question that I'm probably asked the most often, and the one that I absolutely get excited to answer. And there's really five things that I try to outline. And the first one is be curious. And you're in higher education administration now, Travis, and it always was interesting to me that inside higher ed would come out with these uh, this annual research of presidents. And here's what I found interesting. They would say, what are the most important components of your job? Fundraising was always in the top three out of about 10 or 12. Okay. Fundraising was always the top three. The number one thing, almost always, you might go out and see that it was number two, but almost always the number one thing that they were least prepared to do was fundraising. And I'd ask a lot of people at the national organizations in DC and other places, but I think this is my thesis. I don't have any data to back it up, but my best guesstimate would be that presidents, they get to a level and then they're afraid to ask questions because they're supposed to know this. This is one of the top
Yeah,
things
they
of
don't
your
want to
job.
sound
Why are you
dumb, right?
asking? Yeah, so this is what I tell them. Number one, be curious. Ask a lot of dumb questions. Don't be afraid to and take your fundraisers. You're right. Take your fundraisers to lunch and coffee. Ask questions. People in fundraising, they love to share. We share best practices all the time. So that would be one of them. Be curious. And then I would say be focused and organized is number two. Like you can get lost doing so many things. I remember I did consulting work for car sports, and I would go to these universities, and they would all be scattered. You'd be so scattered in their job duties. They would be doing major gifts and annual fund and events, and I'm like, you can't. They're different brains, and so to speak, in using this. So have a plan. Who are your top 10 prospects? Can you clearly articulate what your priorities are? There's nothing worse for fundraisers to know when you're talking to donors and you really don't know what's most important, because donors, they want to help something that's impactful, and you need to be able to articulate that. So, and then also, what reports are you regularly reviewing? Okay, so again, be focused and organized. You have to be organized. If you're not intentional with your time, in the last report that I saw for university presidents on Inside Higher Ed, was the thing that they wish they could do more was fundraising. Okay, so you have to be intentional. Carve a day or two out and tell your fundraiser, if you're an AD and don't have a background, say, hey, these are the 2 days every month that I'm carving out. Take me where you want me to go. But we've talked about number three, and think big. You got to think big and to inspire giving at the highest levels. And thinking big is having compelling projects. I remember when we were at Arkansas State and Terry Mahajer, he wasn't afraid to think big. And that transformation of the football stadium and some other things is absolutely amazing. But it's just because he wasn't afraid to think big.
Which
There's
sounds
some
like
risk and
maybe,
failure, right?
which maybe sounds like that maybe whoever was the president, whenever Dr. Danny White went to Tennessee, that Central UCF, that they made a good hire then, that they went out for another visionary person that's not afraid to think big.
Yeah, he's not afraid, but that's kind of a challenge that I've seen with some programs, that some are just afraid to put themselves out there. But if you want to inspire, again, if you want to inspire giving at the highest levels, you got to think big. You absolutely have to. And it's just, I mean, it's critical. And then the fourth thing is you got to be enthusiastic and optimistic. You have to.
The A versus B that you talked about earlier.
Yes, yes. And let me tell you a story about having enthusiasm and optimism. How can you possibly get donors excited if the person leading the charge, whether they're a head coach or a athletic director or a lead funder, if they can't get excited about it, how can so as an AD you have to have enthusiasm and excitement, and it shows to these donors. You can't fake that. So whatever compelling project or priorities that you land on, believe in it. Believe in it. Okay, you have to. But one time I had a donor who was a minority owner of the Texas Rangers. He flew in to visit with the dean, and the dean literally almost put him to sleep. And I was so I don't know. I had so many emotions going on at that time. And he goes, Jason, I was friends with this donor, and to this day, remain really close friends with him. And he said, man, don't ever put me in front of that dude again. And he was serious. He was totally serious. So, but he was boring. Speak with some enthusiasm. If you want me to invest 7 or 8 figures, I better hear it in your voice that it
Yeah.
is going to be, again, impactful. And then Travis, the fifth thing is, man, don't forget to do the work. Like all the other things, they sound great, but guess what? You got to see people. You got to see people. The best return on investment of your time, going to see people and listening. That's doing research. That's doing research. And also doing the work. Hey, the best bat's a swinging bat. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask. See people. Ask. Do the work.
I think
So,
that that kind of reminds me of Ren Baker. I had Ren on when he was still at North Texas, and hopefully have him again on one day to hear about what he's doing at West Virginia. But I think his thing was, being able to have someone had told him this that um, don't get past, I think, the second conversation without making an ask, because at some point you're gonna have to. I talked to him about like what if someone's kind of nervous to ask for money, and like you want to have that authentic relationship, but you also they know what you're there for eventually. So you're kind of like
yes.
curating that conversation, that relationship in the first one. And maybe you ask on the first, and I think it was maybe the Texas AD that had told him that or something, but I had to go back. It's been like 5 years now, but he always came off as kind of one of the most known fundraisers and that and a really authentic person. And I was gonna, you don't have to give me your Mount Rushmore, but you can. But I don't need to know who the bad fundraisers are. But I mean, is anyone doing it like really good that we might know about, or like who do you just like, even if it's just a department? I mean, I just kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts on who's maybe doing things the best so that we can pay attention to them?
Well, of course, at the power level, I'll just stay there. 12th Man Foundation. I mean, I remember, I graduated from LSU, and I remember 20 years ago, they were the one that people would come see, including some of the powerhouses of the SEC and Big 12, and so they do it really well. They think not next year or 2 years from now. I mean, of course, they have a tactical plan that they execute, but because they have that board with a lot of successful business people, they're thinking 10 years down the road. And of course, that's really tough to do in this climate, but they really have some forethought. And Champions Council, that was the first of its kind, and it was to create ambassadors and investors. And how do we get people interested? How do we bring these new coaches and they build a relationship? So, but 12th Man Foundation is definitely among the best. But you got great fundraisers across the board. I mean, Ross Bjork, who I've known, you mentioned Ren, Terry Mahajer. I could go on and on. So I don't want to leave anyone out. But hey, when you talked about Ren earlier, there are a couple of things that came to mind that I think are just, here are a couple of tips. Ask on the second visit. I don't know. I don't know that. It's different really for everyone. But here's what I know. Sometimes when you're too aggressive, it turns people off. But here's my tip. If there's a fine line between being aggressive and not aggressive enough, be accused of being on the aggressive side of the line as a fundraiser. And then also,
Well, I
I
mean,
think
because they're
it's,
not to interrupt, but I mean, they're not
yeah,
dumb. I mean, they know why. Like everybody knows what your title is. Everybody knows what your mission is, right? If you're coming off authentic and not just too salesy, they
yeah.
expect you to be a little aggressive towards it, right?
Yeah, but some, because we have these titles that say development officer, and so not everyone knows. But yeah,
Okay.
I would always, Travis, when I would visit with donors, I would always go in and say I'm a fundraiser for the university, because I don't want to waste my time. Again, when I talk about having a plan and being organized, look, when you have 500,000 or in some cases 100,000 living alums, how are you going to spend your time most wisely? You don't have time to see them all. So I would rather somebody reject me right away, right? It
Yeah.
saves time. But and one other thing, something that I think is critical is, especially for big gifts, I would always plant the seed. Plant the seed. You don't, 95% of your visit or conversation is just, hey, Travis, how's it going? Great to see you. How about this weather? Yeah, man, those LSU Tigers, I don't know about them this year. They looked a little shaky last Saturday. And then you would say, and by the way, that new stadium renovation, we're getting close to being public about it, and that's really going to just change the entire trajectory of the program. So you got to plant the seed so that second and third and fourth visit that you can ask them
Yeah. So
because
are you kind of telling them ahead of time, like when you're talking about planting the seed, um, like, hey, here's what's on the horizon of what we're working on, whether it's public or not yet, like here's what we're thinking. And just so you know, if you want to, be involved in the future, and then you can kind of go back to it, like how far out are you kind of planting that seed for something that maybe isn't even a certainty yet that you're going to do? Maybe internally it is, but say we're going to renovate the north side of the end zone, the stadium. Yeah, we're thinking about doing this just so you know, just so it's on your radar. Is that something that you would still consider in planting the seed?
oh, with your top donors, absolutely, because guess what? It gives you information. It's research. If I explain a big project that we're just in consideration phase, and I can see, and guess what? This is what you're going to tell me. Oh, that is the best thing ever. Or you're going to say, I just don't think that we need that right now. Well, guess what? If you talk to a handful of your top donors and they're like, I'm not really big into scholarship. I'm not really big into facility. Then that gives you feedback, right? So I'm a big proponent of planting seeds because I've seen it. Travis, I planted the seed for um, a, a gift that named the College of Business. Okay. And it was just the second visit. I said, Neil, we'd love to get the first name college at Arkansas State. And guess what? About three visits and 2 years later, and I'm sitting down with him in Kerrville, Texas, and he goes, Jason, I got some news for you. And I was like, oh man, I think this is going to be good. And then his wife was like, don't tell him yet. So we watched the end of the Masters on a Sunday, and then he goes, Jason, how does the Neil Griffin College of Business sound? And I was like, oh, Neil, that sounds fantastic, man. That sounds great. But he did it because 2 years earlier, I had a conversation with him. Donors just don't come up with ideas and bring them to you like, hey, I'm just thinking about this $30 million gift. What do you think? That that might happen, never happened to me. So you got to plant seeds and get it stirring around their head and get it on their radar. So it goes a long way. So that would definitely be something for aspiring ads that don't have a fundraising background. Again, those are some tips that I pass along pretty often.
Well, here's a tip, just from you talk about curiosity. So I'm not a fundraiser, but I was just at a family reunion on my wife's side, and so my wife's cousin, he's usually my fantasy football commissioner. I told him, I was like, I'm not doing it this year. I lose every year. I'm coaching my son's youth football team. I was like, that's the only football I can focus on the weekends. But I told him, so he's working on a basketball arena. He's like works for a company, a design company for mostly athletic facilities. So I was just asking him, I was like, how's that facility coming? Just talking. Then I probably asked him like 20 questions about like, well, why is it more expensive? Or like, why is it so if it wants to be this design? And so, I'm thinking like when you're talking about all this fundraising stuff, you also probably need to be kind of sharp and be curious about like, okay, like COVID happens. Okay, we know costs are going to go up. Tariffs might make it more expensive. So maybe I got to know in the back of my head that like we're probably going to have to raise more money than we think if we want to take it the extra mile with this facility project. And so I was just asking like a bunch of questions, not even like I'm not part of the fundraising team for that university, but I'm just thinking like talking to you is like that's probably if I'm a fundraiser, I probably want to not just surface level information. Going back into your research of like, okay, what project am I trying to cultivate money for, right? And like, what's the worst that can go wrong? Like look at other comparable places and look up news about, the timeline and how much the costs were with these tariffs, things like that. Because I feel like you could probably speak intelligently with that with your donor because they're probably going to know too, or they might ask you. But like, okay, well, if I give you this money, you're going to come back for more because steel prices go up. So I feel like obviously that's not going to be your main part of your job, but that's something like if you want to stick out a little bit, do a little research, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, whether internally or externally, we talk about relationship building, and that's really what fundraising is. It's relationship building. There's an art and a science, but if you share information, here's what I know. It says, I trust you. And hey, if you trust someone, you can build a relationship again. I'll say that again. So sharing of information, not only does it give you, it gives you insight to whether Travis is interested in this project or not, but it also helps build a stronger bond. And you can't do that with every donor, right? You can't do
Yeah.
that with every donor. There's some donors that are highly engaged with social media, and you know that
Yeah.
going in. So you'd be afraid that they put something out. But for the most part, I would say like 95% of the time, you really don't even have to worry about that because these are people that understand how the game is played. But yeah, donor research. The best donor research is face to face. And I once had a colleague that was so worried about not having enough information before they went and saw this donor that was worth probably $250 million to $500 million, really wealthy donor. And this fundraiser said, I know what the dog's name is. And I said, hey, don't bring that up. Okay. It'll probably freak them out if you say, and Toto, how's Toto? And they'll be like, oh my, that's weird. Okay. So just go see again, best return on investment of time for anybody in fundraising that needs to fundraise. Just go see people. You build a relationship, you share your backgrounds, you learn about each other. It gives you an opportunity to know, hey, Travis is interested in AI. So I'm going to see this article. I'm going to forward it to him. Say, hey, I thought you'd be interested in this. Hope you're well, right? It gives you an opportunity to build a relationship. But uh, anyway, I get so excited about talking fundraising. I can't help it. So I'll cut myself off there.
Well, if you had time, I have one last question for you that I was just thinking about because I do try to help people like because this isn't really going to be a me question, but it's probably a listener or viewer question. If you got time, it can be quick. The so say I'm when I'm building out a resume or I'm going into an interview, I do have a fundraising background. As you advance in your career and you interview for jobs, what's like the fine line of how you write it in your resume that you were a part of this team versus I was the lead donor and I raised this much? Like, you don't want to take all the credit, but you want to be part of that team and you want to also stick out. So, I mean, what do you tell people when you're advising them? Unless this is too much free advice, then we can cut it off. But like,
No,
how do they write that resume so that they're not coming off too individualist, too much individualism versus team.
yeah. So yeah, there's a fine line, right? And I would say discretion is needed. But look, all of this is teamwork. If there's and guess what? Some of the gifts that particularly ads, if they're not within maybe within their first 2 years of working at a place, man, it's probably not because of what you did. It's because of what your predecessor or
Hmm.
predecessors did. So, it's all teamwork. And I really mean that. Fundraising is totally a team sport. So I think anybody that's been in fundraising would know that. So, but you also want to cite numbers. And guess what? I was more popular at working at Texas A&M and in a $4.25 billion campaign than I was at Angelo State. Now, let me tell you, I'm 100% positive, not 99% positive, that it was tougher. I did a better job at Angelo State. But people, when they hire, they want to say he coached for the New York Yankees. They don't want to
Hmm.
say he coached for the Toledo Mud Hens. No offense to the Mud Hens.
Brian
I don't
Blair
even know
might
if that's
listen,
their
man.
name.
He's gonna be mad at you about Toledo
I
chat.
know, I know. I love Brian. Hey, but it's just the way it is. But don't be afraid to cite numbers, and there's always a way of wording things. I mean, it's all teamwork, so don't
Yeah.
be afraid to cite numbers and just tout the things that you did. Um,
Well, the hiring
like,
person might know that person anyway, so you're probably you don't want to lie and oversell it because they're
no,
just gonna
don't
check up
don't
on you.
exaggerate
Yeah,
because
small
it
network.
yeah, small network. Don't exaggerate. Don't. So that would be definitely the piece of advice I would have is don't exaggerate and don't put. I probably over the years hired at least 50. Sometimes I say 75 because I've been part of. But this is what I know. I would rather hear the 4 bullet points that I helped to accomplish or I was part of to help accomplishing versus 30. And some people like they cite things that it's just like, have you read the job description? That has nothing to do with this job. Why are you
Yeah.
putting it in here? So make sure it's pertinent to the role that you're going for. Don't copy and paste the same thing every single time. Take if it's something that you want to pursue, take the time to personalize it. 100% accuracy, not 99%, and just be concise. I would lean if you're ever worrying, do I put this in? Just like I was saying earlier, lean to being accused of being aggressive as a fundraiser. Well, when you're a job search, be accused of leaning towards conservative. Less is more.
Yeah, it could always come up in the interview conversation too. It's like, oh, this isn't on my resume, but I can go into this too. And so you want to maybe save some when you're talking about being conservative.
Yeah, read
Well,
the job description and talk to people out there that know what the job is at that institution. You have to, and that gives you insight on how to strategize for that role.
Dr. Jason Penry of Penry Advisors. I feel like I'm a smarter man for listening to you talk about fundraising. I'm 100% confident that people who listen or watch this are gonna benefit from it. And so this is probably a an idea that I'm gonna have to stick with is find one topic and go deep on it. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a while I take this break of not just interviewing ADs like I've always done. So thanks for taking the time, and you can send the bill to the audience for the advice, okay?
Yeah, well, Travis, thanks so much for having me. I get so excited to talk fundraising. I love it. I'm passionate about it. And I just really appreciate you having me. And hey, one more thing I want to say is to give a shout out to my parents, Mike and Rhonda, not doing well. Love them and just wanted to, I never done that. And I just want to say hi to them. But thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.